Okay, so today I'd like to talk about how things cross the plasma membrane. So when we're thinking about the cell membrane, the question is, how do things get across cell membrane? Okay, and it's important to remember that when we're talking about this cell membrane, remember that it's simply a layer of two phospholipids. All right, you got your hydrophilic heads, which are charged on the outside, and these hydrophobic tails made out of little fatty acids right here, which do not have a charge. You've got two little layers like this, and they go all the way across. All right, and we'll say that this side of this plasma membrane, that's the outside of the cell, and on this side, it's the inside. Now you've got these, charged heads of these phospholipids. They have a charge, so they're attracted to all those polar water molecules, which basically make up, the extracellular fluid and also the cytoplasm. Inside the cell, you have the cytoplasm. It's primarily water. Water's charged, and so these two charged things, the water and the hydrophilic heads of the phospholipids, they attract these uncharged parts of the phospholipids, these hydrophobic tails, little fatty acids. They hate water, and so they're pointing in the opposite direction, right? So we have this plasma membrane composed of all these phospholipids. You got cholesterol and stuff in there too, little cholesterol molecules kind of interspersed in there. And the thing is, the cell needs to get things across this barrier between, the inside to the outside world. It needs to get nutrients in, needs to get waste products out, gases in, excess gases doesn't need out, hormones, chemicals, things need to get across, all right? So we're going to talk about ways that the cell is able to kind of accomplish this, how it's able to move things like a piece of sugar, like a glucose molecule from the outside to the inside. Okay, but before we get into that, we need to talk about a couple of really important concepts that you learned about in other classes, but we're going to review them here for a little bit. And the first concept that we're going to talk about is good old diffusion. Okay, so diffusion, if you were to define it, that's basically when little objects, little particles, or whatever it may be, are going to passively and spontaneously spread out from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So in other words, an example would be if we're looking down like a glass of water, and you were to drop one little drop of food coloring, which is basically just water that has a whole bunch of little particles that are a certain color, like blue, if it's like blue food coloring, you'll have a really high concentration of all those little blue food coloring particles right in the middle of the glass where that drop entered in, when you first drop it in there. But then over time, all those little particles are just going to automatically and passively spread out. Okay? They're going to spread out away from that center initial drop until eventually, you get a nice even distribution of all those little blue food coloring particles. That's basically diffusion, all right? All those particles just wanted to spread out from an area of high concentration to low concentration. It's important to note that this happened automatically. It happened passively. We didn't need to input any energy into this system in order for those particles to spread out by diffusion. Another example would be, let's say we have a little container, like this guy. All right, and in the middle of that container, we have a membrane. Okay. And let's say on one side of that container, we put a high concentration of a bunch of little particles. These could be anything. Let's say that they're like potassium ions. Whole bunch of particles on this side. Right? So if this membrane we're going to say that it is permeable to those little potassium particles. That means the potassium can cross it if it wanted to. And what's going to happen through diffusion? I mean, what would you predict? If it's high concentration over here, low concentration of potassium over here, potassium can cross, that means it's definitely going to cross. And over time, all those potassium molecules are going to spread out, so you get a nice even distribution. All right, it diffused across that plasma membrane, that barrier. Okay. All right, so that's basically diffusion. Things spread out, high concentration to low concentration.